Welcome, welcome. Today I want to build out a repertoire for club players using the Scandinavian. And it's kind of an interesting idea for a repertoire. Um, to make a long story short, sometime back I was exploring this variation of the Scandinavian defense. And when I was looking at names in the database, I recognized the name Agadmator, and I didn't realize it was actually him, but it was actually him. And I pulled him up in the database and noticed he had a massive score with the Scandinavian defense. And so I went to like his YouTube, and he only had like one video, and I'll put a link to it in the video description about actually how he plays the Scandinavian or whatnot. And I think it's probably about 20 minutes long or so. But it's a variation I had looked into like well over a decade ago, explored a little bit, but didn't end up playing it full time or anything like that. But after making this Kali repertoire using Chessbook, it's been really working well for me, and I really like using this chessbook to make these repertoires. So I thought, well, what if I make a repertoire based on the lines that he uses in his actual games in the Scandinavian? And so first I thought I'll show real quick here what I mean by how well he does in the Scandinavian. It's kind of crazy because if we put him in and I hover over his E4, or his white repertoire, I should say, with E4 he has a performance rating of 2200. This is in the Lichess database. So as white he has a performance of 2200. Now what's amazing is when you go to black, against E4, when he plays the Scandinavian defense, he has a performance rating of 2213. So he does better with the Scandinavian than he does with white, which I found just fascinating. And with the Sicilian, he scores 2148, which is still really good, but it's, like 60 points worse almost, I guess, than with the Scandinavian. And as you'd expect, he performs worse with the Sicilian than he does with white, which would be the logical thing that you would guess. And so what's interesting is also the way that he plays it. And this is, like I said, I ran across this before when I was exploring these lines. I saw his name in there, and that's what made me pull him up. But what he does is, in a nutshell, he retreats his queen to d6. This is kind of a well-known line or whatever. But the interesting thing is this a6 move, and that's what I had explored way in the past. And it's technically not necessarily maybe the soundest, or at least that was my understanding when I read up on it like a long, long time ago. But it seems to be very effective at club level, and it's not like it's like unsound or refuted or something like that. But you can see it like when you get to his level, you'll face g3 a lot. At the lower club levels, you won't. That's the best way of playing against it. But you can just see like against bishop to c4, just he has a massive score, 2266. And a lot of people would play b5 here and gain time on that. He doesn't. He develops, gets his bishop to g4, and he basically sets up, he castles on the queen side and will go for this e5 break, and just massive results in it. And so I thought, okay, well, I played it, I just threw a 3-0 game on it. And I've played this in the past too, but what I found amazing is how poorly club players play against this thing. And I think that's like the secret in itself, the secret sauce to this thing, because it's kind of like unusual positions, right? And so, the players are left on their own resources to figure out what to do, and usually they don't necessarily figure out the best plan. Like disclaimer that you can lead to like some really crazy positions that are hard for us too. It's just, but my thought is you get experience in these positions, and our intuition will be much better, and it'll also provide a lot of like tactics will come up. So if we play these games and then review them, it will, I think it could be kind of like rocket fuel for our improvement. So I threw a game up because I just for shits and giggles I played a 3 minute game today earlier, and it kind of shows, I don't really know anything yet, and that's why I'm going to build this. But I'll flip through it real quickly. But I just kind of did the same thing that watching his video. You played this a6, bishop to g4, get this Viking center going on. And what's interesting is okay, he makes this move here, which is not a good move. But the thing to know is that we got 3 pieces on this right now. He's got 3 defenders. And he does this move that's kind of a waste of time. And so, like in this position, we can get away with just grabbing this pawn. And I noticed that happens just a ton at club level. Some things like a caution, it's not, you don't always want to grab that pawn when you can grab it if they're going to have enough activity and they can get their rook centralized quickly and gain all kinds of time on you. We don't necessarily want to grab it. But like in this position where white just wasted time with this useless move, totally justified, right? You can see on the graph down here, it's just we're completely winning. And then what I thought was interesting is I just, play along. We're up a clean pawn up, so I'm happy to offer trades into an end game. He knows that he doesn't want to do that, so we gain more time on him. And then I go, okay, well, I'm going to come back and just, if he doesn't move this, I'm just going to force a queen trade, and then we're in a winning end game. So I go here, and he sees the threat of mate over here, but doesn't realize, was so distracted by that. And I think part of it is that the player was so shell-shocked by trying to come up with a plan and then getting a little rattled when they lose the pawn and not understanding what's going on. And, all the stuff they've studied on all these other lines doesn't apply to this. And that's why I think this could be a really interesting weapon, because he just drops this. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Like, he's rated 1900, and I mean, just dropping hanging queens. I mean, you don't see it that much at that rating. People don't just flat out hang queens. But as I was flipping through some games, in the Lichess database, it's amazing how rattled that black gets, or that white gets, playing against this setup for black. And this setup is called the Viking Center, from what I understand. I'm gonna have to dust off this old book I had that I looked at in the past, but this kind of queenside castle, and then playing and then going for this e5 push is called the Viking Center. So anyway, that's kind of my thought on it, and I'm going to use Chessbook and just flip in and out to see what lines he's played, because he's had so much success, and he's had it at a level that's beyond the level that I hope to get to. So I know that it's successful at the level that I want to get to, and well below that. So I figure, what the heck, I'm gonna build this out and experiment with it, and use Chessbook to drill it, get an intuition, a feel for it, maybe drill it with their model games. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go in and into Chessbook and start setting it up here. So just like in the Kali, I am going to, we look into the settings, I am going to have the rating set to optimize it for 1600, 1800 on chess.com, and have it cover positions that you would see in 1 out of 150 games. So if you play 150 games, we'll cover the lines that would show themselves in that many. So we're not just like this. Just like I really like the Kali system one that I did on here, because I'm able to remember the stuff, and I don't think it's helpful to study stuff that you're going to see in 1 game out of 500 or something. And you need to spend time getting better at chess. So I'm going to keep those settings the same, and I'm going to go in there and start building the repertoire, and we're going to build it against the king's pawn. We're going to do that, take, queen to d6, and then I kind of explain a little bit more when I built the Kali system, so I'm not going to spend much time. I just want to plow through and get this repertoire built. But we're going to work our way down. You can see this is how often you expect to see these moves. And because knight to b5 only comes up in one game out of 259, we're not going to bother with it. We're just going to get the ones that you would see in one game out of 150 or more often than that. So what I'm going to do here is hit this analyze button. It will bring up a Lichess database, and I'm going to expand this out. And I have this set to games that Agadmator played. And so we can see that here he plays knight to f6. So that's what we'll go back in play. D4 is the most common by white. Now I know that he plays this a6 here. So then we're going to look at other, we'll go a little bit deeper. And if we hit the analyze button again, we can see that he plays knight to c6 here. So if we went into the general Lichess database, you'd see that the most common move is actually b5, right? We're gaining time on that. And then you can play c5, you take their queen, then you play e6, and you can win that c-pawn back. So that's what's kind of cool is you could, eventually play this. We could, expand the way that we play it if we want variety. But for now, what we'll do is play it the way that Agadmator plays it, which is knight to c6. So I'm just going to be choosing the ones that he does. And it thinks that we can end there, but I want to keep going because this is kind of like the most common main line. So I'm going to keep adding moves. And I believe he plays bishop to g4 here, which he does. b3, castle queenside. And the thing to know is that we go back, but we will double check. Oh, and so very interesting. So that's kind of cool that we get this right off the bat. You can see that he has a 2270 performance rating against opponents of an average strength of 2246 by playing h5. So notice that. So if he takes, we take here, hit this knight when we're lining up on that square. So that's nasty. So this is going to be interesting. The computer evaluation doesn't like it, but let's go in and turn on, look at the actual database and see what most people play here. Wow, the most common thing that people play is to take it, and that's just losing. So I want to put this in there just so that we can see that it's lost. So I think this is enough. It's kind of obvious that we're lining up here. Wow, that's cool. So I'm just going to save it there. Because the whole point of this is we don't want to go too deep. We're going deeper than recommended, but by doing so, we notice this thing. So I'm going to be going a little bit deeper than it necessarily recommends, but hopefully it shouldn't add too much study time, and it should add some alpha, because we're just going to copy his moves because he has such good success with this thing. All right, so we're going to go to the next gap. All right, so bishop to e3. I'm sure he plays knight c6 here, but we will find out. Yes, knight c6. And if queen d2, bishop g4. So far it's kind of very thematic. And let's just make sure that he has games in the database for him here. He does, so this is how he does play it. And we won't go, we'll just do this and end there. But we'll know that our ideas are basically to try to play for like e5. All right, he more than likely plays knight c6, but let's find out. Knight c6, castle, bishop g4. Notice the theme. Castle, bishop g4. And look, this transposes into the repertoire, so that's good enough. All right, so I bet he does a6. Yes, a6, castle, knight c6. Now, we'll put this transposition in there first, because it's nice to have those in there. I like to put those in right when they come up. All right, knight c6 probably. Let's see. Yeah, knight c6. d4 will transpose. All right. All right, so less ambitious going to d3 instead of d4. I'm sure we still play knight c6. And like, look at the score on this. 2275. Same setup. So I think that's far enough. All right, interesting. Wonder if we'll play knight c6 or a6. So a6. So that's consistent. Knight c6. Bishop g4. Yep. And there. Yep. All right, I think that's deep enough for that. I'm going to close out some of these windows. All right, knight c6, I bet. Yep, castle, bishop g4. And we transpose. 13% done already. a6. Knight c6. All right, I think that's probably far enough. We know what we'll do there. It's kind of unambitious, so we do our general plans. All right, so we have a quick d4 here. Let's see how he does that. So knight f6, knight f3, a6. So this transposes back. All right, now these are the better. This is kind of like, we won't see it a ton at club level, but at the higher level, this is kind of what keeps grandmasters away from playing it, in my understanding. So they're going to fianchetto, and then they're going to put the bishop here, and then we have to end up bringing our queen usually to b4, and then maybe back, and it's not terrible or anything, but I don't think we'll see it much, but he'll probably see it some. All right, so knight c6, and then if bishop f4, queen b4, c6, bishop f4, queen b4. And what's interesting is it looks like maybe that is actually an heir. Here, let's see. Let's turn the engine on. But what's interesting is that score is okay. Let's turn on, let's go to the Lichess database. Queen b4 actually scores better for black than for white at the 2100 level, even though it's technically an heir. So the question is, for consistency, do we just play the heir? That's an interesting thought. Here, let me go back to the beginning of it. So he doesn't do as good in this line as he does, but he still has a 2230 performance. And as you can see, his average opponent is 2272. So that's really kind of interesting, is that even against opponent with 2272, when he plays queen to b4, he still scores better than he does when he plays white. So like players of that strength, that are that strong, they know to do the fianchetto and play bishop to f4, but they clearly don't know the plan after that. So I think in our first iteration of this, let's just play what he plays. And you can see it scores great at the lower levels. I have this set to 2000. So this means it would be players between 2000 and 2100. Scores better for black than white, playing the move that if we turn the engine on is actually an heir. And the only way to punish it, I guess, is with a3. So it's going to be so subtle that unless the people that we're playing are cheating at club level and have their engine on, we're not going to, yeah, you can see only 10% of the time is played. So let's just play it. What the hell? It'll be easier to remember. And then we'll save that. I'm sure it's bishop g4. And it transposes. Ooh, interesting. So this is when they just come charging at us. And knight to e5. Note that this is pinned. And then we gain time on that. So I think if we know it up to there, that's pretty good. Worst case scenario, we just liquidate everything, right? That's the worst case scenario. Drive this away, exchange everything off, grab this pawn. All right, kind of a... So they're trying to stop bishop to g4. So we just do knight to c6. Let's add a couple more. Bishop c4. Let's see how he handles it when he can't go bishop to g4. He just goes bishop to f5. Scores 2243. So, yeah, life is good. Take a quick break here. Be right back. All right, another transposition. Actually, I want to go a little bit deeper in this one. So we got to take refuge on b5. Sorry, b4. So let's just at least go to there. Oh, interesting. So he opts to keep pieces on the board and not do a mass liquidation. All right, 30% done already. Sure, it's A6 here. Looks like it's going to be very compact at 1800 and under level. All right, so he plays A6 and transposes back. I'm sure he'll play A6. Yep, it's pretty easy to predict. A lot of transpositions. All roads lead to a nightmare for white. Knight C6. Bishop G4. You can see we transposed into something there. So, let's see. I want to see. I think we'll stay consistent with this plan. Save it there. All right. Queen E5 check he plays. I remembered from when I studied that a while ago, I think there was some kind of problem with Queen E5. So we may vary on this if it's concretely wrong. Yeah. So people know this. If they know it, they know it. So we'll just do queen to B6. He plays knight F6. C3. Transposes. It's interesting how he sticks to that setup pretty much all the time and does fine with it. So you can see his responses start to scatter here. Queen d7 I know is usually a fairly safe square, and he does the best with that, so we'll do that. Let me get rid of all these. I don't fully understand why. Let's see what happens if they hit us with c4 in both cases, just to try to see if it's... Okay, so if we go there, and they charge forward... Guess we run to there. So I'm just trying to think of how hard that would be to remember. But it is clearly better. I guess the memory marker will be if they can get this quick c4 in, maybe worth getting your knight there so you can get your knight over, get your queen over to h5, and then have that protect your knight and put pressure on this knight. So I think it's possible to memorize it. So let's do it. And we're going to add, I just want to add this because it will kind of highlight our memory marker. And the thing to remember is we're in the less common stuff now. All right, so that transposes. All right, so that's a quick c4. So he does queen to e4 check. So that looks fine. e5. Knight c3. Wow, this is interesting. And I wouldn't mind seeing one more move. So this one transposes, so that's obviously what we'll do. Okay. So he plays queen e4. I guess it scores fine. And it is consistent. So we just take. So he doesn't have many games in this. He plays knight f6, which is good too. He likes to keep pieces on. Let's just see. Okay, so he takes it. Because I think most people are going to play knight c3 there. Let's go to the database. Yeah. So I think in this one, we are going to just capture it right away. And then develop as usual. All right. So usually this is like a French where you can get the bishop outside the pawn chain. So like c5 and knight c6 and then pin the knight when it comes there. But let's see what he does. Okay, yeah, c5. Oh, wow. Look at how many games. Interesting. Yep, knight c6. So the idea is to try to let them play knight f3 and then pin it, so we don't move this until we pin it. If we have to move it, that's fine. We move it to f4, f5, but kind of stall because now we can. I'm sure he pins it. Well, he's only played it twice, but yeah, we will pin it because that's the better way to play it. Usually, it's easier anyway. I should say it's not necessarily better. Let's keep it. He doesn't have a lot of games, so let's just keep it easy by doing this. And then I kind of like to give him more opportunity to. Yeah, this one's kind of a close call. Let's see. Let's just get the bishop out. Clear out these things here quickly. We'll just get the bishop out. It's fine. These are not things to worry about because it's all good positions for black anyway. So now we can just pin it. He plays knight c6, which is fine too. So we'll play knight c6. And I think this is good enough. We don't need to go deep in these. Knight c6, c3, new different move order. All right. It's interesting that you do see this sometimes. D takes e4, knight g5, knight f6. Oh, interesting. Hmm. To me, the easiest, most natural move, I kind of like this bishop g4 because you're immediately. But, he has a really good score with this too. I'd like to defer to his if possible. I guess that's an interesting way. Knights just get developed and not worry about memorizing stuff. It's a good idea from a cognitive load standpoint. Sure, he takes it. Ooh, e5. Interesting. So the Viking center kind of sticking with the theme. Good enough. And we can always, like, what's good to know is that just kind of using this kind of standard knight c6 e5 thing, yeah, it doesn't fully take advantage of kind of the weaknesses of this line, but you're still better with black than with white, and you don't have to kind of remember anything. So if you get to the point where you want to remember how to maximally, get the maximum response to everything like this, well, fine. But for now, it's kind of good to know that you can just trot these things out. So let's see, how does he respond to this? Takes the bull by the horns and takes it. Which is fine. And probably does this, right? So that's interesting. This is the most common. I'm sure he plays knight c6 probably. Yeah, I kind of like it. Like he's found a way to just kind of get positions. Look at this, 87% complete. All right, let's see how he does this. Takes, knight f6, okay. And let's see if he takes with the G or the E pawn. So this is like a Tartakower if he... Oh, he's got kind of an even split. I think I'm going to go with... Well, I guess E he does more commonly. Still scores better with this than he does with white. So this is like almost like a... It's going to be similar to a Tartakower Karl Khan. And I've played that, so I'm just going to do this. Oh, wow. Almost done. Look at this. Oh, we're not doing this. So we are done with the king's pawn. Interesting. So look at, we got everything covered. So let's go see how it stacks up. Let's go out to the front page. 98% complete. I'm not sure what we're missing. Yeah. But we got full coverage for all the E4 stuff. So we're good. Let's see. Let's look at some repertoire stats. So we got 85 moves, which means this would fit into the free repertoire size on chessbook.com. So anybody who wanted to could load this in the free version and use it. And look at this. Wow. Your repertoire is a higher expected win rate than 98% of players at your level. And it's more sound than 67%. So it says your repertoire has a higher expected stockfish evaluation than 67% of players at your level. So what I will do is I will export this repertoire as a PGN. I'll put it in both a chess.com library and a Lichess Study. So anybody who wants this can use it. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll make a video showing how to load this in to chessbook.com and then drill it on there because it's so compact and efficient yet effective. So it's compact, efficient, effective. So Agadmator really kind of found a gem here. And we did what his choice like 95 or 98% of the time. So then you got a player that you can pull up and look at games on. So yeah, this is kind of amazing actually. So I'll throw this out in the world, and I'm gonna start experimenting with it, playing some games, and then trying to learn it as I go. Drill it in chessbook.com to get feel for it. But notice how at the settings that I put it at, we should have pretty good coverage, 1 game out of 150, which is recommended for intermediate players. People could go up to advanced at some point if they wanted to. I think 1 out of 150 is more than enough. And optimized for 1600, 1800 chess.com. So, wow. I feel like with this and the Kali, it's doable to remember these well enough to kind of exceed players at my level, and not have to put in a shitload of time memorizing all kinds of stuff that you'll never see. All right. Hope you like this, and I'm curious to see how it goes. It'll be fun. Got the Kali system and the Scandinavian Nordic Nightmare. All right. Take care, guys.